Howdy, readers. I'm Jason. This is chapter and verse, and in the midst of all of the kind of litmus stuff and the planning and prepping for my Christmas Carol live streams and seasonal TBRs, seasonal wrap-ups, best of the year, there's a lot going on with BookTube this month. There's a lot going on with my own channel, and most of it hasn't even seen the light of day yet. Most of the videos that I've got planned for this month are actually going to be coming in the last 2 weeks. So essentially from here on out, right, the last week and a half of the month. So I hope I don't overwhelm you. It's not going to be like Steve Donahue levels of overwhelm, but yeah, there's a lot. There's always a lot to do at the end of a year. Taking stock and making plans for the next year and this, that, and the other thing. So before we actually get to Christmas and get to the book hauls of Christmas, I've been promising you guys one more small book haul for a while now, and these are books that I got on Book Depository earlier this year. And so I just wanted to share those with you guys. And we also got our first Library of America book since Kelly and I became Library of America. I don't know if you're like a donor, a sponsor, member. I think maybe that's the right word, member. But anyhow, let's get right into these. So the first of these books is going to be of particular interest to Paul Kennedy. Over at PK's Books. I will link his channel below. And Brian at Bookish. So Paul is a Scot, and Brian is of Scottish descent. Brian lives in Texas, and Paul actually lives in Scotland. But this is And the Land Lay Still by James Robertson. Now, I have wanted to read this book for a really, really long time. I have owned James Robertson's other novel, The Testament of Gideon Mack, which I still have yet to read, but I've owned that for many, many years. And when And the Land Lay Still was published, it never came out here in America. And when I was on Book Depository a few months ago, it struck me, because it's a British book distributor. It's a British online book ordering service. And they have American editions, British editions, and Australian editions. And the shipping's free overseas. I was like, oh my God, I should really look and see if that's still in print. And it is. So I bought it. And I wish it had, so here's the trade paperback cover. I wish it had the original hardcover cover, which was like a little rocky island in the middle of a kind of foggy lake, and I always thought that was really beautiful. And but yeah, this is God. What is this about? Kind of modern day Scottish society and politics, I think. But yeah, it's supposed to be wonderful, and it's a big chunky book as well. So. I own it now, which makes me happy. Like it's not even out in America. It has never been out in America. And it's in my own personal library here in Casper, Wyoming. How cool is that? The next couple books I wanted to show you guys. So Kelly and I ordered the last two Dickens novels that we didn't own yet. And one of them is the novel he was working on when he died, which I believe was finished by Wilkie Collins after Dickens' death. And this is The Mystery of Edwin Drood in a really beautiful Everyman's Library hardcover edition. And then we also got the Penguin Classic edition of Barnaby Rudge. Now, I have heard people on BookTube say Barnaby Rudge, which the spelling of the last name of the character would suggest Rudge. But I've always said Rudge. Just because my professor, my Dickens professor in graduate school, John Glendenning, always said Rudge. And, yeah, he's an expert in Dickens. And so I thought, well, if anybody knows how to pronounce the title of the book, it would be Glendenning. But anyway, so these were the last two Dickens novels that we needed to get. And so now we have essentially a whole shelf of Dickens. We still don't have his American Notes. I think some of the short fiction, I think, is still missing from the collection. But for for the most part, we have all of Dickens now. And then I got what I think was... No. Yeah. Yeah, I think this was the last Peter Carey novel that I needed to buy. That is The Chemistry of Tears, in this kind of funky little Australian edition that's sort of like a mass market trade paperback hybrid. It's a weird size. It's got kind of a tight spine. But yeah, I think the only Peter Carey book, all told now, fiction, nonfiction, what have you, that I need to get is Wrong About Japan. I think that's the only one. I even have his children's novel, The Big Bazooly. But anyhow, yeah, Peter Carey, Chemistry of Tears. And then this was brought to my attention. I had never heard of this poet before. I think it was Paraquito, one of my subscribers. I think it was Paraquito who put this poet on my radar. And I had never heard of him before. A religious poet from the mid-17th century. And and I got online to see if anything was available, if he was still in print at all. And on Book Depository, they had this edition of his selected poems from Fifield Books, Carsonet Press. And it was a press I was vaguely familiar with. My Christina Rossetti edition is from Carsonet Press. But yeah, this is Richard Crashaw, selected poems. And I haven't looked through it very much yet, but I'm really excited to. And I have a feeling this is going to be one of those collections of poetry that becomes more and more important to me over the years. So thank you, Paraquito. If it was you, I think it was you. Was it you? And then the last book that we got from Book Depository is something that Kelly and I had both been talking about reading soon. But and neither of us had ever read it before, but we didn't own it, and so we thought, well, let's go ahead and get it. I thought let's go ahead and get it, and so we got The Call of the Wild by Jack London, in one of those really beautiful Penguin English Library trade paperbacks, and this is kind of a funky size too. It's a little bit like that Peter Carey one. It's sort of, I don't know, halfway somewhere between trade paperback and mass market paperback. But look at all the little blood splatters in the snow and on the tops of the dogs and the wolves. So I've been wanting to read this for a long time, especially since years and years ago, that Northern Exposure episode that I've been in conversation in the comments field with some of you about, when Chris in the Morning on Northern Exposure read The Call of the Wild on air, and it was a kind of framing device for this adventure that Maurice and Holling went on in that episode of the show. So that's The Call of the Wild. And then lastly is our first Library of America book since becoming members. And this is Barbara Tuchman, The Guns of August and The Proud Tower in a single volume. And I'm going to go ahead and try to take the plastic off. I don't have a little schnauzer to feed it to. No, Frida doesn't get plastic on Steve's channel. These are really lovely editions, the Library of America editions. And look, in the end papers, sneak that dust jacket off there. If you can see this, it's got a map for the Western Front. Yeah. So anyway, Barbara Tuchman is a writer that I have been wanting to read for a long time, particularly her book, A Distant Mirror. And so I'm glad to have this now. And now we've got 2 other free books from them coming, which I haven't ordered yet, but I'll get on that soon. Anyway, I wanted to get all that taken care of, that last book haul, before the Christmas books come our way. And I hope you guys are doing really well. I hope the Christmas season isn't kind of overwhelming everybody too much. And I hope you're enjoying Litmus. And I hope you'll be joining me here in a couple of days for the beginning of my Christmas Carol live streams. The first one, the first stave, is going to be on this Friday night. That's going to be fun. That's going to be an adventure. So I hope some of you will be able to join me for that. In the meantime, adios.